Hello guys, and welcome to this video. In the next few videos, I want to cover the basics of CMake. We have been talking about projects and libraries and all kinds of crazy things you can really do with CMake, but I think it's high time we started covering basic things like variables, functions, macros, flow control, and things like that. And that's what I am going to cover in the next few videos. In this one, we will be covering the basics of CMake commands, and we will be using the message command as our learning tool here. We will be talking about what kinds of arguments you can pass into CMake commands, because that can be pretty confusing. And to do that, we want to be using CMake like we have been using it in a few videos that we've done before. We will be using CMake in script mode. Script mode is really a stripped down version of how CMake runs. It's not going to be running in project mode processing CMake list.txt files. It's really going to be working like a scripting language. You give it a script, it's going to run it and give you a result. And that's going to be easy for us to run commands and see them running right away without being bogged down by the project details. So that's what we're going to do here. Now, the message command is what you use if you want to output something in the build process of your CMake project. You can think of it as stdc out in C++, print in Python, and really any kind of output command in your favorite programming language. Here we have a simple example of how we can use it. We can say message and pass the message we want printed out in quotes here. And if we do something like this and run this script, it's going to print the sky is blue. Easy, right? Another way we can do this, we can pass bracket arguments. And here you see the first thing you need to know about CMake. There are different ways to pass parameters or arguments to your CMake commands. The first version we did here passed quoted arguments, and we can also pass bracket arguments, and you wrap them inside these open brackets and closed brackets like this. And you have to make sure the number of equal signs in these brackets is the same. You can see that we have one equal sign in these opening brackets, and we have one equal sign in these closing brackets. I don't remember if we have talked about CMake multi-line comments, but this is really like passing a comment, a multi-line comment inside your message command here. And what this is going to do, it's going to keep all the spaces that we have around our message here. You can think of this as a row string literal in C++ that we are passing to the message command for output. So this is something we will play with in this lecture here. We have also seen that we can pass arguments in quotes, and one of the benefits of passing arguments in quotes is that you can escape characters. For example, if you want to print a new line character, you can do it like this. Really the same thing you do with C++. You can escape spaces, you can do all kinds of crazy things. Another thing these arguments in quotes do is evaluate variables. For example, here we have a built-in CMake variable named CMake version. We can print it out using this syntax here. For now, this may be confusing. We will talk about variables in a while, but this is how you print a variable here, and it is going to show up in your message command. Notice that the entire thing is wrapped in quotes. So this is a quoted argument. Another thing you should know is that you can also make your message span multiple lines within the quoted arguments that you pass to the message command. This is something you need to know. So if you want these benefits that quoted arguments provide, please use it in your CMake projects. But we can also pass arguments without any quotes around them, and we can do it just like we do here. We can say the sky is blue, and this is going to show up on your terminal. We can say two arguments here. This is going to show up. We can say the sky is blue with semicolons, and this is going to print something on your terminal. But the difference is that when you pass naked arguments like we are passing here, spaces and semicolons act as separators. If you look at the second message we are printing here, we have two arguments because the space here is acting as a separator. The same is happening on the third message here, where our semicolon is acting as a separator. So we are passing 4 arguments to the message command here. The second message is passing 2 arguments. The first message here is passing, think about it, 1 argument because we are escaping the space here. So this is really 1 string of text. This is where many people get confused. I really want you to take a moment and think about all these kinds of arguments. Next arguments will also evaluate variables, so they really are like quoted arguments. But the main difference is that in next arguments, semicolons and spaces act as separators. If you pass semicolons and spaces within quoted arguments, that's not going to have an effect, but we will be escaping character sequences like we have seen before. I think this is enough basics, so let's hop over to our editor and play with this a little more. Okay, here we are in Visual Studio Code. This is our editor that I will be using in this video here. And one thing you should know is that before you use CMake in script mode, your CMake code has to live inside a file named with a .cmake extension. You can see that our first file here is named 1-message.cmake. So this is the naming convention we have to follow here. Another thing is that you have to run CMake with a P flag to tell it that it needs to run in script mode. And when you do that, it's not going to generate a project. It's not going to generate cache variables. It's just going to run your script. And this is what we want in this video here. So let's do this. In our file, everything else is commented out really. You can comment in CMake like we are doing here using this symbol. And we have a message command which just says the sky is blue. Notice that we are using a quoted argument here. So if we run this, it should print the sky is blue on our terminal. So let's do this. CMake, and we need to pass the P flag, and we will give it the name of the script, and it's going to be 1-message.cmake. If you do that, you see that it's going to say the sky is blue in our terminal here. So this is how you output messages. We are using a quoted argument, and this is one thing we are passing to the message command. Another way we can do this is to use bracket arguments, and they really look like comments in CMake. But before we really do this, let's show you how to use comments, multi-line comments. This is what I mean. In CMake, you can open a bracket like this and put in any number of equal signs, and the equal signs will show up within these brackets here. So you can do something like this, and you see Copilot is giving me helpful output here to autocomplete what I want to do. So this is our comment. Why is it a comment? Because we are opening with this square bracket. We have a number of equal signs. You can have 0 equal signs. That's valid in CMake, but you can also have 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 equal signs if you need that. Anything that is within these brackets is going to be a comment, and it's not going to be processed by CMake. Let's try this out. Let's run the script again and show you that this is going to run. And for this to be a comment, I forgot to add this symbol that really makes it a comment. So it is good to always run your things before you confirm. Let's try to run again. This is not a big problem. We are learning. So we have a comment here. We can set up another one. Let's do that. So we can close this. You see Copilot is helping out. And this is another comment. If we try to run, let's do that. It's really being ignored by CMake. It's a comment. So you can see that when we pass a bracket argument, it really is like a comment, but it is showing up inside a message command. So let's do that. We're going to remove this comment, and you see that with these bracket arguments, we can span our message across multiple lines. So D is going to show up on one line, sky is going to show up on another line, is blue is going to show up on another line. Let's try to do that and run. You see, we can do this. Now we know 2 ways we can pass arguments to CMake. Arguments can be quoted like we have done on top here, but we can also wrap our arguments inside brackets like we are doing here. This is also going to work. Let's look at the nuances of quoted arguments. I think we can comment out what we have done before because this is going to confuse us a bit. And if you don't want to type this, I am going to share this file. You will find it in the Git repository of this series, and you can really copy and play with this however you want. The first message here is going to say the sky is blue, but notice that we are escaping a quote here. Okay, so this is going to show up in our message. This is something you can do with quoted arguments. You can escape character sequences. This is going to be a new line, and this message is going to show up. One thing you can do with quoted arguments is also make messages span multiple lines. This is one of the powers of CMake. I don't think you can do that with C++. If you print a message and do something like this is not going to work. So this is very specific to CMake, but quoted arguments can also do variable evaluation. And what this means is to grab values in variables and use them in our output message here. This is something you can do. Please remember, these are the properties of quoted arguments. They can escape character sequences, they can span multiple lines, and they can evaluate CMake variables. Let's try to run this and see what we get. Okay, make sure you remember these basics. You see we have the sky is blue. Our quote that we escaped here is going to show up in our output. This is what we have here. After that, we have a new line that we are escaping. This is going to throw us to the new line, which is where we see my friend. The second message is going to say, with great power comes great responsibility, but the message is going to be split across two lines. This is what we have here, and we can evaluate the variable. You see this CMake version variable is evaluating to the version of CMake that we have running, which happens to be 3.27.2. We can confirm that by running the CMake version command on our terminal here, CMake version, and it's going to show us the version. This is something you can do. Let's close this and see what we can do with naked arguments, because this is another kind of argument you can pass to your CMake commands. The first one is saying the sky is blue, but it is escaping spaces. So this is something I want you to see. The first space here is escaped. The second space here is escaped. So this is going to be one argument, and it is going to be saying the sky is blue if we print it. The second one is going to have two arguments, because when you are using unquoted or naked arguments, spaces like we have here and semicolons like we have here act as separators. So the message command is going to see that you are passing two things to it. And if it has the capabilities to process multiple things, it's going to process them. This is something you need to keep in your mind. So the second message command here, what did I do? The second message command here is going to pass two things. The third message command here is going to pass four things. D is one thing, sky is one thing, is one thing, blue is one thing. But the output is going to cramp all these things together. But in some cases, it makes a difference to differentiate how many arguments you are passing to your message command. Let's try to run this as a CMake script. So we can hit up a couple of times. If we do this, it's going to say the sky is blue. One thing you should notice is that because we didn't escape the space here, so let's make sure you can see that we didn't escape the space here. So this is really not one argument, it is two arguments. But the output is going to crop all these things together. So if we want this space to also be seen in our output, we can escape it by using a backslash like we are doing here. And if we run again, I think we are going to see the sky is blue. The second message is going to output two arguments, but they are going to be cramped together. This is really something I want you to be careful about. We are passing two arguments, so these are two things. But the message command doesn't care how many things you pass to it. It is going to cramp them together in the output. That's why it looks like we have one thing here, but we are really passing two things because they are separated by an unescaped space here. The same is true. Semicolons act as separators. So we have four things in the third message here. If we print, we're going to see the sky is blue because the output is going to cramp all of these things together. This is really what I wanted you to see in this lecture. I apologized if it turned out to be really long, but these are the basics that many people gloss over. and they end up hurting your career in CMake because these things confuse a lot of people. So in CMake, you can pass bracket arguments. Please drill this in your brain. You can pass quoted arguments. You can also pass unquoted or naked arguments. With unquoted arguments, spaces and semicolons act as separators. Sometimes this matters depending on what you are doing. Both quoted and unquoted arguments do variable evaluation, so it is going to be a matter of choice what you want. But personally, I think that quoted arguments make your CMake code readable because it is the same habits we have from C and C++. This is really all I had to share in this video. I hope you found it interesting. I am going to stop here and I will see you next time.